Dear students, as we have discussed earlier, in the simple Keynesian model of income determination, investment is an important component of aggregate demand. As we have seen, aggregate demand is equal to C plus I. But in the simple models, 2-sector, 3-sector and also 4-sector models, investment was assumed to be a fixed amount. I was treated as equal to I bar. Investment was assumed to be a fixed amount in each period, or it was assumed to change by a fixed amount from one period to another period, that is I plus delta I, assumed to change by a fixed amount from one period to another period, without explaining how investment is determined or how or why investment change from one period to another period. That is, investment was treated in the simple models as exogenous. In the simple models, investment was treated as exogenous. But remember this, investment is, as we have discussed earlier, the most volatile component of aggregate demand. Consumption is stable from period to period, but investment is the most volatile component, determined by shift in entrepreneurial expectations. As an example, if you consider the economic history of US from 1929 to 33, investment declined by 85%, 48-49, investment declined by 20%, 73 to 76 period, investment declined by 32%, 79, 82%, 82, 17%, like this. In the history of US economy, investment declined by 85% this period, 20% this period, 32% this period, 17% this period, etc. So investment is the most volatile component of aggregate demand, and consumption is a stable function of income. So instability of investment led many economists following Keynesian tradition to view that economy is inherently unstable. A capitalist economy is inherently unstable, subject to violent fluctuations in output, business cycles. So fiscal and monetary policies are required to stabilize the economy. Active monetary and fiscal policies are required to stabilize the economy. And in this session, we will explain the meaning of investment and also the factors determining investment. Investment in the form of a definition. Investment is defined as that part of an economy's output, the value of that part of an economy's output that take the form of new structures, new producers' durable equipments, and change in inventories. So investment is the value of that part of an economy's output produced in any given time period, which takes three forms. One is new structures. Then the second is new producers' durable equipment, and the third is change in inventories. So investment spending is classified into one, business fixed investment. Producers' durable equipment means business fixed investments. It includes equipments and structures that the businesses buy for production. That is in the form of buildings and machinery. Business fixed investment is in the form of buildings and machinery used by the business firms to produce goods and services. The second one is residential investment. Residential investment is new houses purchased by the people to live, and also purchased by the landlords to rent out. So it is nothing but residential construction investments, apartment houses, etc. In modern times, this is a very important component of investment, residential construction. Third one is business inventories. And those goods which are kept aside by the business firms in the form of materials and supplies, work in progress, finished goods, inventories of raw materials, finished goods, etc. And the reason for keeping inventories we have discussed in detail in a previous class. So these are the three forms of investment: business fixed investment, residential construction investment, and inventory investment. Also, investment can be viewed either as gross investment or fixed investment. Investment can be viewed either as gross investment or fixed investment. If we deduct from gross investments an allowance for the amount of existing total of structures and producers' durable equipments used up in producing that output, we have net investment. So from gross investment we deduce depreciation, that is used up portion of structures and machinery. It is known as depreciation. We will get net investment. In the form of a notation, IN is equal to, net investment is equal to gross investment minus lambda is the rate of depreciation. I can write IN as equal to IG minus lambda k. And IN is delta k. So delta k is written as IG minus lambda k. If gross investment is equal to depreciation, change in capital stock or net investment is 0. If this is greater than this, positive, otherwise negative. So the amount of gross investment consists of new structures. Then, so we have three types of investment. Can be viewed as gross investment or fixed investment. In the form of a notation, this is net and this is gross. And the amount of gross investment consisting of business fixed investments and residential investment, new structures and producers durable equipments is called gross fixed investment. So the first two taken together is gross fixed investments, investment in structures, etc. This gross fixed investment is divided into non-residential investments, that is business fixed investments, and residential investments. This gross fixed investment consists of, one is non-residential, and gross investment consists of business fixed investment and structures. Structures are made by business firm and also residential investments. So gross fixed investment is classified into non-residential investments and residential investments. And the balance of gross investment is change in business inventories. Change in business inventories. So investment, three types, and fixed investments, gross investment classified into fixed and inventories. Fixed itself is change in structures, both by business and households, and also investment in machinery, etc. So this is the classification, and we classify it in gross terms and also net terms. Now, to explain aggregate investment expenditure, we have to consider all these components. But it is difficult because the factors determining different types of investments are different. So a single investment theory cannot be applied to all types of investment expenditures. For example, expenditure on single unit houses for living is not dominated by profit considerations, unlike expenditures for equipments and commercial and industrial structures. Commercial and industrial structures, equipments, etc. are for profit considerations, whereas expenditure on single unit houses is not based on profit considerations. Similarly, expenditure on plant and equipment are affected by expenditure on new inventories, even though profit considerations are the primary motive behind expenditure on plant and equipments and inventories. The purpose of inventory investment is to ensure smooth flow of output, even though the ultimate consideration is profit motive. So, we cannot explain all types of investments using a single theory of investment. So, what we consider in this session is investment means investment in non-residential investments. Investment here means non-residential investment or business expenditure for plant and equipment. Investment here is non-residential investment or investment on plant and equipment by business houses. That is what we consider as investment in our analysis. So we are concentrating on investment by business firms, not for residential purposes. It is for a commercial industrial use. And investment is a flow variable. Investment is a flow variable. Investment is a flow variable. Its stock counterpart is capital. Stock flow, the difference we have discussed earlier. Its stock counterpart is capital. And if IG exceeds lambda k in any period, that is delta k, capital stock increases over time. Increases over time. If gross investment is equal to depreciation, capital stock delta k is 0. If IG greater than lambda k, k increases. Otherwise, k decreases. So, investment is defined over a period of time. Capital is defined at a point in time. Investment is a flow variable. Capital is a stock variable. What happens to capital over time depends on whether gross investment is equal to, greater than or less than net investment. Now, one more point is, in considering how to arrange a portfolio, intelligently, holders of wealth must remember that different assets will give different returns and maturity. If you are a wealth holder, you have to allocate your wealth by depositing your wealth in various assets. But assets are different from one another in terms of returns and also in terms of maturity, in terms of risk, in terms of returns, risk, maturity, etc. So, one must decide whether the disutility of risk of holding an equity as opposed to holding a bond is balanced by high return from equity compared to low return from a bond. Return from a bond is low, but it is almost risk-free. Return from an equity is high, but it is risky. So, one must compare the risk and return from both these assets. So, the wealth holder must decide what proportion of his wealth, his portfolio, be invested in bonds, in equities, other types of assets like real estate, gold, etc. This is equivalent to the problem faced by a business manager. A business manager must decide whether funds should be used for expansion of capital or purchase existing assets in some other company. Whether he should use his portfolio, his assets to increase the capital stock of his company or purchase equity from another company. So, the problem of determining investment goods is a problem of portfolio management. The problem of investments theory is considered as a problem of portfolio management because decision to invest on profitability of new investments as opposed to profitability of holding existing earning assets. So, this point should be kept in mind. When we study the theory of investment, it is actually a portfolio management theory. The business manager faces the same problem as a wealth holder as far as allocation of a given wealth among different assets is concerned.